Stay with us. It's a good one coming up. I'm sure you're thinking, my goodness, John's got younger. You're right. John's stepped out for a little bit, so we're ably guided through the next session by some good friends who we'll introduce in just a second. We're kicking off again with a good look at digitalisation. And to start us off, I'd like to invite Dmitry Belyakov up to the stage. Come and join me, Dmitry. Dmitry's going to guide us through a short introduction to this session, and then we'll welcome our panelists shortly after. Dmitry, over to you. Round of applause.
And the clicker is here. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dmitry. I'm the founding CEO of Sea Teleport. That's an online travel platform. And today I would like to talk about digitalization of crew travel. So a few words about, if the clicker works. Clicker, guys? No? No? I need a clicker? Yeah, there you go. All right. So a few words about myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm building technology startups, and in the past 15 years, I spent these years in maritime industry. I've built a crew management platform, and now I'm building travel platform. So the company, the Sea Teleport company, was founded 5 years ago, so we're pretty young. But we already have more than 200 shipping companies using us who automate their crew travel, more than 1,000 users using this platform daily. And, well, the reason why I'm sharing this is to give you the idea of how high is the demand for automation of crew travel. Now, today I would like to share my thoughts on what might be the drivers, the key trends in automation of crew travel, and we see 3 trends in it. So, was that a technical problem again? Well, actually, I played this joke before. This is not a technical problem, right? So what you see on the screen now is called a reservation system. And it's hard to believe, but nowadays, in 2022, travel agents are using this to book crew travel, right? This looks like an error, right? And we want to fix this error. Now, about the trends. So, can I have the next slide? There we go. So, the first trend, the first kind of bucket of things that's going to happen in travel automation is related to search. So the problem with traditional search is that search engines, the reservation systems, they are not built for marine travel. They don't understand marine travel. And there are 2 things that are really important to understand in crew travel. The first one is that you have to bring your crew from one remote location to another remote location most of the time. And traditional reservation systems, they simply cannot handle that. And that is the reason why traditional travel agents, they have to hire labor to actually tackle this problem. They have to find how to connect the dots. Now, we think that the trend in crew travel is that modern search engines, they should handle this problem. They should be able to connect the dots. And what we did in our company, we actually removed the dependency from traditional reservation systems, and we've built our own search engine, which is able to fix this problem. We actually put this tool online. It's called Maps, and you can use it today free of charge. It's just, we hope that it helps crew managers to make more educated solutions about crew travel. The second problem with search in crew travel is that traditional search engines, they don't understand flexibility of travel. And why this is important? Well, because we have to cancel a lot of flights. Usually, actually, on average, we see 45% of all bookings are canceled or changed. And if the search engine does not understand that, you can be in a big trouble then. So, search is one big trend in development of digitalization of travel. The second one is about the booking process. Now, the main purpose of digitalization is to streamline your workflows, to make these workflows more efficient, meaning that they become faster. So what used to take hours when you have to arrange a crew change for 30 people, used to take hours and hours, now it takes just minutes. What does it mean? It means that we don't want to copy-paste data anymore. Everything should be directly connected with crewing software, and we see fantastic examples with many crew software solutions who integrate with travel providers, and we get rid of the data input problem. Now, when the flight is booked, then this data has to be transferred back to the crewing solution. Now, what am I talking here about? Is that we do things much faster now, but that means that we still spend a lot of money on travel, and if you do things really fast, then you may overlook something. You may be less cost-aware. And we think that the trend, the next trend in digitalization of travel is budget control. So we believe that ship managers should have better tools, better rules on how they approve travel. And we see fantastic examples when some of ship owners actually delegate travel to crew members, right? Which, 10 years ago would be completely unbelievable. But nowadays, when you set the rules, you can easily give this to a captain, to anyone really, to arrange their crew travel, as long as they are compliant with the budget control. And I think it simplifies life both of crew managers and the crew. So that's about the booking flows. They become faster. The third big trend is billing. We believe, well, I spent quite a few years doing this myself. I remember how painful it is to handle invoices and billing with travel agents. So we think it should be changed. I think the industry will start turning the tables a little bit and saying that, well, ship owners have to decide how exactly they want to be invoiced, what are the payment terms, et cetera, et cetera. Nowadays, the fact is that travel agents actually come to ship owners and say, this is how you're going to be billed. I think this will be changing quickly with digitalization, and we think that ship owners will get more control over how invoices will be issued, how they will be delivered, what will be the payment terms. And in the past 5 to 10 years, most of us seen a rise of fintechs, and we will see a few fintechs on the stage in a few minutes as well. The rise of fintechs means that we also have more payment solutions. So nowadays, majority of payments in crew travel happen by bank transfers. However, there are virtual business credit cards. There are different payment solutions that facilitate instant bank transfers. And shipping industry can definitely benefit from this type of automation as well. So to sum up, we think there are 3 areas that can be improved in crew travel. That is search, where search engines have to become better. They should understand marine industry much better, connect the dots, understand flexibility. Second is booking, where we see the trend of speeding up the execution of crew travel arrangements. But we have to be really cost aware. We have to have very watertight budget controls. And the third one is billing, where you should be dictating how to pay, and you should be able to use more payment methods. And I will be happy to show all of these innovations at booth number 3. And thank you for your attention. Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Dimitri. And as you can see, Dimitri will stay with us as we welcome our other panel up as well. John has, I guess, in this digital age, sent his digital twin to moderate this session. So, Dito, please join us on stage. And Dito is going to take us through this. And I'd also like to welcome the rest of the panel up. Captain Soma, if you're with us, please. Adam Lewis, Roy Matchart. I see eagerly jumping to their feet. Nikos Gazalidis and Gisa Parades, if you could join us on stage for this next session. Round of applause. Thank you.
Hello. Nice to meet you. Hi, Captain. Yes. Hello. Hi, Adam. Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Hi. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch and a nice break. John Adams asked if I could take his place, and it struck me that we're talking about digitalization, connectivity, and normally what goes with that is seamless interconnection. So I don't know if I can be seamless enough to take his place, but we'll give this a shot. And what we have here today among our panelists are areas of travel, crewing, health, wellness, and training. And it would be interesting if I try to connect this with the panel we had before lunch, where we talked about this just transition in maritime and the complexity that brings to the table on top of the fact that we are anticipating a continuing shortage of officers. And who knows, maybe even ratings. We talked about the fact that the evolution of industry is going to be driven by the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions. And in the process of that, what does it mean as far as crewing operations is concerned, efficiency, and more importantly, training? And when we talk about training, we're training current seafarers, global maritime professionals, and as Sturla Hendrickson talked about in the previous discussion, talked about the fact that could people be left behind? And Jackie Smith was talking about the fact that let's make sure that it is fair. Transition and change are part of our industry. So how do we anticipate the future? And so it's interesting that in the panel that we have after lunch, we're thinking about what will the digital role be, how it will play in the different aspects that in one way or another affect crewing operations on the one hand, but more particularly the interface with the individual, because we want to make sure that as far as seafarers are concerned, we make life easier for them. And if we make life easier for the crewing operations, probably there's more time to be spent in guiding them and developing their careers, hopefully retaining them, so we don't have this boom and bust cycle where we're always recruiting, and if we can't retain people, then we're constantly recruiting. So given that as a background, and I hope I will have a seamless connection with you because I'm not sure if you prepared the same way that I was just thinking of it, maybe we could start with Gisa from a wellness perspective. How do you put the whole digital perspective in place, and where does wellness fit in, and how can you connect with the seafarers, and more particularly with crewing operations?
That was a loaded question. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gisa Parades. I'm from Well at Sea. But digitization, crew operations, all of that, I actually made a couple of points.
Please,
so
go ahead.
I'll just share
Yes.
them with the group.
Yes.
So generally, this session looks at digitization and how the pandemic has really shown us new ways of doing things, right? So what we've seen, at least in the last few years, my first point I put here is that I see that digitization has reshaped the way that we approach health by providing health education to promote an attitude of prevention. So you mentioned also that we're in this cycle of, do we always have to keep recruiting? Do we always have to keep training? How about just retaining them and making that sustainable? I talk about the attitude of prevention because prevention models can be shaped around the seafarer by educating them in valuable soft skills to become first responders to one another. My second point is that health education does not have to be isolated to certain positions or ranks. In moments of crisis, senior officers can feel the burden of supporting everybody, and I think we know this, that we tend to isolate training in our senior officers. They need to be the doctor, they need to be the counselor, they need to be the teacher, they need to be the mentor, they need to be the boss, they need to be everything. And we can protect our officers by adopting technology to spread learning. Another thing is that digital means greater reach. As a health professional, it became crucial to me that health solutions were accessible to as many people as possible. This is important because in the Philippines, there is less than one psychologist for every 100,000 Filipinos. And from my perspective, the Philippines needed help. And if in our industry, it was hard enough to reach the seafarers in the pandemic and they themselves felt like they couldn't reach us, it was important to make health solutions accessible. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you are, please.
My last point is that lastly, digital means data, and data means trends. So when any health entity is collecting information and seeing patterns, it is an ethical obligation to the community to share findings. Transparency and data exchange is key, from my opinion. And failure to exchange information is a failure to our industry. I think it's high time that the industry invested in research, shared observations and strategies to to set sail in a direction that is truly collaborative?
No, thank you, Gisa. I think all of those points are very important because you don't want to send anyone to sea that isn't healthy. And clearly, when you begin to study the individual, so much data comes about. But as one of these questions out here is putting is, we have been used to doing things a certain way. But as digitalization comes in, we need to be prepared to change. And change requires a mindset. So the elements that you put together are important, and maybe I can turn to Adam. Adam, from the employer standpoint, what kind of change and change management must we manage, particularly when you look at health as one aspect of everything we're going to talk about, and see where does that take us and how does that address this just transition in maritime and the ability for us to continue to recruit the best and brightest of future generations?
Okay, thank you. I think obviously when I look at this, I look at it from a human perspective and certainly more from a training perspective. And I think what we've got to be realistic about is that there's all these innovations coming out in shipping, which is fantastic, but more importantly, the people we are recruiting have changed. The COVID pandemic caused a lot of disruption around the world, and especially in high schools, because all of a sudden, all around the world, these 16 to 18-year-olds were learning education through Microsoft Teams and Zoom. And that has suddenly sort of transformed the way people want to learn in the future. They've come with all these digital skills, and I think it's important for us now to embrace them and to look at different ways of doing things. We don't have to reinvent the rule book. Like I spoke earlier, we can learn from other industries. But I think more importantly, we want a more diverse way of doing things. I myself, I'm not a good person to learn in a classroom. After 10 minutes, I switch off. So I'm someone who learns much better through multiple platforms, perhaps online. I listen to audible books, I listen to podcasts. And for me to have that diverse way of thinking, or diverse way of learning, is much better for my retention. And I think this is the same for a lot of young people we recruit, because at the end of the day, they are practical people. So I think my take-home message at the beginning would be, there's a different way of doing things now. And I see one question coming up about TikTok learning. Fantastic, it's another tool we can use. It might not be the ultimate solution, but it's something else we can use. So, like I said earlier, onwards and upwards, change is coming.
Well, that aspect of change, Adam, is really something that I think we all have to embrace one way or the other. And what that suggests is that when we train, or even when you look at health or any of these aspects, we need to learn how to learn. Because if we don't learn how to learn, then we will stop and affect the whole idea of change management. Maybe I can turn to Captain Soma. How do you want to address this issue of learning how to learn? Because that's going to drive us into the future, whether it's in terms of travel, whether it's in terms of crewing solutions, including health, maybe from a big yellowfish perspective.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and hearing it out. Very valid question. I think good points brought by Lisa as well as Adam. I think one fundamental thing I would bring in when we talk about digitization is three important aspects which come into forays: people, process, and technology. I think unless we have all these three things come together and behave like or act like a symphony, the whole process of digitization doesn't go well.
Yes.
I think for the longest period in the industry, when we speak about change management, we've been process-driven for the longest period. From the advent of ISM code, the whole industry has been obsessed with process and procedures, which have been kind of pushed across to the audience or the crew rather, and adoption of these processes have not been properly, addressed. So for the longest period, it's been like something that's thrust upon people. More importantly, technology has never been considered from a people experience point of view or a human experience. The whole idea would be that if you bring the human experience as the central focus of the technology that you build or the process adoption that you do, then there is an efficiency that drives in. Just to give a use case, for example, we talk about training or we talk about process implementation in organizations. The challenge here is that you have one side people, you have one side organization which is expecting to implement certain systems in place, and your people who are expected to execute, and there is a gap. And this gap has to be bridged, and the bridging can happen through adoption of technology. And I think the technology helps you, one, to drive efficiency into that adoption, achieve a higher scale, and facilitate a change management process in a seamless manner, because you are able to kind of go to the last mile crew. For the longest period, if you look at it, the complete adoption system or the process of change management has always been adopted through the captain of a ship. The single point of contact. I myself being a master mariner, I know that most of the direction is always through the master, and it is expected that you have to deliver, and there is so much subjectivity. But the moment you bring in digitization and you push it to the last mile crew and give them the access to that information and that adoption, I think then the change management will become more and more efficient in whatever that you want to achieve. It could be in the form of process, it is in the form of healthcare, welfare, travel, etc. Any subject that you take, but it has to go to the last mile, or their ability to, or ability to reach to the last mile for them to be able to adopt it.
Sure.
I think my take is on that I think technology going forward, or digitization going forward, should be thought more from a human experience perspective. I think that's the...
And no, that's very true, because the interface for the user is important. And oftentimes, and many of you like these programming things, and Dimitri, as you showed earlier, it depends on whose perspective you're looking at. And I think the perspective that has been shared and is part of Crew Connect is, let's look at it from the eyes of a seafarer. Roy, from your perspective, Marine, how do you bring this element into play as you develop the solutions that you look at?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I would like to share a very personal note. Thank you, former team, to having invited me here to share my views. Very much happy to somewhat, after 3 years, not being here, seeing so many friends. So I'm so happy and proud to sit here in the audience and talk to you guys. Many of you know me, maybe in a completely different function, because I've worked in more than 20 years for the Driller Group of companies. And last, I was heading the crewing activities in the Driller Group of companies. And last year, I decided to jump ship. Deciding to jump ship to another extreme called fintech. Fintech somehow is completely unknown. I was thinking, at least, when I joined the new company. But why it was driving me, making this step. One of the driving factors was Swift. Why Swift? Swift was implemented in May '73. And I was asking myself if I would still be happy to drive a car made '73, except maybe being a Porsche, that's a different. So I thought something's wrong and something needs to be done. And so I decided somewhat to contribute with my expertise to make new products being ready for the shipping industry and make the shipping a more digitalized place to be. And that's my opening, so to speak. And we have been doing this summer a survey. We have been asking a research company to do a survey for us, asking about 1,000 seafarers across the globe, across nations, across ranks, addressing digital topics, but also payment topics and all this stuff, and just wanted to share with you a few of the outcomes. Just 1 minute. Need to read it because I'm getting older, I do not remember all those figures. It was said 37% of seafarers run out of money when ashore. It said 84% of seafarers worry about the security of cash on board. 76% of seafarers agree or strongly agree that it is difficult to send money home. 68% agree or strongly agree that more mobile or digitalized services would improve their well-being. 68% also agree or strongly agree they would choose a shipping company that would be having more digital solutions than now. So I think this shows quite a trend, not only that the seafarers are demanding that we are moving, but also for the seafarers somewhat to move and somewhat come also into these new technologies.
No, thanks, Roy. I think the fact that you've done a survey is very important, because it, as the captain has talked about, it is that last mile is understanding what are the pain points, and hopefully all of the digital roadmaps that we're creating across everything, including health, are focused on addressing the needs of the individual if we want to recruit and retain, compared to other industries that seem to have an easier time. And it was described this morning that the life at sea is not easy. And so the wellness issues are also big. So if, as you take your surveys and understand exactly what the pain points are and convert that into applications with a proper interface, then hopefully we will get that kind of connectivity, the seamless connectivity and the efficiencies. But let's talk about last mile. Nikos, from your perspective, you are a last mile provider in many respects. And how is ATPI trying to bring all of this together in order to provide a seamless travel experience, if you will?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to look at from the point of view of the overall crew change experience, not just travel. Before, during, and after the crew change event, we have some very successful implementations, technical adoptions over the past years. The crew management systems for one, the automation within travel, we have a lot of solutions in that field, and also on the port agency field as well. More closer to the seafarer are also the implementations of intranet of the cruise companies. So there are very good examples of technical adoption, but they are primarily around during the crew change event. It's during the implementation stage. What we are missing, and there aren't, until before the pandemic, we didn't have that many examples of technical adoption before and after the crew change event. And some of them affected seafarers as well. So the question is the digitalization only about technical adoption? Or it's also the ability to build knowledge, understanding of processes, of functions that at the moment they're kept more empirical. Knowledge builds confidence. Confidence to address new challenges, and confidence safeguards business sustainability and business continuity. So there is definitely a lot of room and for more technical adoption, digitalization in the whole field of crew change cycle. As I said, particularly on the before and after. First of all, main is that somebody mentioned data. Visibility. We're missing on visibility of the total picture, not certain functions within the crew change, the overall experience. Accurate data can be converted into actionable intelligence. And actionable intelligence means corrective actions, better planning, better budgeting. Efficiency, it was already said, process efficiency, improvements. Again, not only in one part of the journey, but throughout. It starts, of course, with better planning. Shipping companies will say, yes, of course, we have good planning. But it's rather fragmented. Shipping company with one marine service provider, with money, with travel management, with port agents, and any other who is involved now in the crew change process. But not together, not everyone coordinated. Also, there is a possibility of savings. Savings in the total cost of crew change. Not only savings of $200 on an air ticket or $500 on the launch, but looking at the bigger picture. If we have this information, then we can take better decisions. And there are two other elements which are closer, especially after COVID, we felt it more. And one is seafarer well-being, and the other one is decarbonization. Now these are nice titles, but how do we align those within the overall strategy and values and policy throughout this crew change cycle? How do we incorporate those? Eventually, at the moment, or until recently, until before COVID, the cheapest route was the most popular, I would say. So whatever the cheapest route, this is what they would select. Now there are many parameters that can determine the crew change location and also the overall process. And it can be the safest, it can be the shortest, and it's closer to the seafarer, along with the legacy priorities of being the cheapest, or now, in the future, the greenest. So these are parameters that need to be, all of them to be taken under consideration. So definitely there is a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, because coming out of the pandemic, there are already these kind of solutions. There are companies who come up and they offer this kind of services, and there is more room for others to come as we start questioning. COVID gave us this opportunity to question our existing processes. So now there is awareness, and there is already, we want a better planning, we want a better coordination, and some companies I know that they have revisited and even redrafted existing processes. So the next thing, the only thing that is missing is how to make it successful. We know that we can embark with more digitalization, but there are some critical factors. It was already said, so I don't want to repeat myself, just a short. Crew change is all about human interaction at different levels. So we need to make sure that when we convert it into the digital, it's used properly. We are building a machine not to replace our people, but to make our people's life easier. So these people that are going to use it, they need to be aware of that. So change management is important in advance. With the millennials, it's easier. When we deploy millennials, they look forward to this. But when we still deal with older generations that might be threatened, so the use of technology needs to be with the proper introduction. Mindset needs to be changed as well for shipping companies, not only for their own employees, but for themselves as well. They need to open up. They need to create common platforms. Common platforms to be shared during the crew change, I'm saying. I'm not talking generally. During the crew change, they need to open up with their marine services collaborators, share the data, share the knowledge in order and to have the same goal, to reduce the cycle, to make it more effective. And in order to do that, they need to become like an extended team. And to be real partners, all of them on the same journey, and not just a pool of reactive multi-vendor suppliers.
Well, what you talk about, Nikos, is very, very complex. You know, we talked earlier about we need to learn how to learn. And what you're describing, taking off on what Captain Soma was talking about, is let's understand first what the problem is. And Roy, you talked about doing a survey, the last mile. And what it suggests is this whole digitalization journey is not going to be easy. It's very complex. It involves many different things. Nikos, you talked about the fact that it used to be just, can I get a cheaper ticket? And now there are many other considerations, including health issues, because if you are in the back of the bus and you have to go 36 hours and you don't sleep, and then you're on the watch as soon as your vessel leaves, that's not exactly healthy. How do we try to solve that issue? There are questions here that, you know, we can't do it ourselves, and it can't just be the private sector. You've got to have governments involved. You've got to have all of the stakeholders. So how do we get the whole of industry working? So let me turn to Dimitri, because I want to talk to you not from the standpoint of just being a travel solution provider, but you're at the heart an entrepreneur, and you're also an IT expert. So when you listen to everybody on the panel and you look at some of the questions, that how do you do people, process, and technology to bring out the best? What does it tell you, and what does it suggest that we can have as an interaction? Because once you figure it out, you've got to talk to Adam and say, we've got to train for this. And not just train the crew, but train the people on shore to be able to utilize those situations.
Well, first of all, I want to build on top of what Nico said and you said, that change management is not a simple problem at all. It's a complex, big problem. And when I'm thinking about big problems, I like to break them down. Then they become just a little bit easier. So, and change management in my mind consists of basically three components. The first component is what kind of workflows we're introducing, or are we changing any workflows? So essentially, digitalization is, the purpose of digitalization is executing tasks faster usually, right, or more reliably. Therefore, the workflows is the first component. Second component is people. So who will be those people who will be running those workflows or controlling those workflows? And the third one is technology. So why I like to break it down is because when we think about change, then we should observe, monitor, and measure those three components. Are we picking the right technologies for the problem? Are we training our people correctly to use that technology? And are the workflows that we're trying to automate are good? And I had, in my experience, a few, well, actually many occasions when we were very successful with customers, but also very not successful with customers. And what I find interesting, one finding that I consistently see across the board, that smaller companies actually adopt change much easier, right? Much faster, more flexibly, while larger organizations, they require more thinking time, more time for consideration, discussions. So why does it really happen? So I think the smaller companies, they actually are more ready to fail. And failure is not a problem if you approach it correctly, if you approach it from the perspective of your learning curve. And then when a company prepares for digitalization the way that the company is ready to fail, and then I would suggest to look at it from those three verticals, workflows, people, and technology, then you can extract some valuable knowledge, and then you decide whether this way of digitalization actually works for your company. And we had also fantastic examples with really large, enterprise-sized companies. And I will just share one example. One company, what they did, they created some sort of a silo when they had a little department of people who were trained, and they were told that, from tomorrow, your workflows will be completely different. And here is the new technology that you're going to use. But be ready to fail. Don't worry that there will be some mistakes, there will be some errors. Just make sure that you report them, you measure them, and then you bring them back to the table, and we have a discussion. And this way, that company extracted a lot of knowledge out of those experiments, sometimes little experiments, sometimes large. And they kind of, since they had this experiment internally, they already had some internal champions, as we call them, those people who actually support this drive to change, people who understand the value of that change. And that helped those large organizations to scale this little experiment to the whole organization.
No, thanks. Interesting. Change is scary. Change can be scary. Adam, when you look at change, and you look at what Dimitri just talked about, which is failure, can we train for failure? And how do we train for failure or challenges, given the complexities of what everybody is talking about, from your perspective?
Okay, this is quite interesting. I'm not sure if we can necessarily train for failure, but I think we should embrace failure, because it's all part of the innovation process. And I think sometimes that's quite hard for shipping, because certainly when we, and many of us have become seafarers, as soon as we go into maritime school in day one, we're taught you must never fail, you must get 90+% in your exams. You go into simulators, you must never crash a ship. Where all of a sudden we need a new mindset, because in order to innovate, there's going to be a level of failure, and we should embrace failure. I think the good example that's always given is the Dyson Hoover. Mr. Dyson made millions and millions of pounds out of it, and he basically came up with about 2,000 models, and on the number 2,000 was a successful one. So the whole thing is, well, actually he failed 1,999 times. Of course, coming from an engineering background, they embraced that, but it is something we're going to have to embrace, this fact that there will be failure and we have to learn from it, and it is part of the learning process.
Thanks, Adam. Roy, coming back to you, when you did your survey, did we survey about the blame culture that sometimes exists, where failure becomes a really terrible thing, but trying to address issues that will make life better on board a ship? Comfort, fatigue, all of these. Did you touch upon those? Or at the same time, if you didn't, how would you address some of the issues that Adam and Dimitri just talked about?
First of all, I would like to share with you something I was taught from a wise man. He said, experience is nothing else but the sum of the mistakes you have done before. And taking this, I'm very experienced, I have to admit. From this point of view, also sharing another story from my master times being aboard, very, very common, probably other masters here in the room could probably share this, that a crew member came and said, oh, my money is stuck somewhere because my wife called me and asked, where's my money? Or another very typical question, I would like to go ashore because I'm going home soon, so could you give me some sort of cash to buy something nice for my wife when I come home? Where I said, sorry, cash box is empty, I would like to, but maybe the only chance you have is to borrow money somewhere. So all these things is just only one example how digitalization can help to overcome this sort of struggle by digitalizing and using, in this case, for example, wallets to simply remit monies instantly, in seconds, safe, transparent, no issues at all. And what we have seen on board lately, that we have been onboarding crews, we found sort of hesitation because always I heard cash is king and something like that. But you could also see lightning eyes in the moment they have opened up a wallet, seeing, oh, money is there. How does it come? So not to ask anybody, simply money is there and I can remit instantly. Cool. Yeah. But this is only one little puzzle piece of many, many other things when we're talking about digitalization. And I have seen one question here in this board where someone asked, should maybe not the flag state or someone else starting with this? From my point of view, clearly no. Because otherwise we're going to talk probably in 10 years and have achieved nothing. So there's nothing but simply to encourage yourself to be more sexy and allow yourself failures, as you have said, and just go down the road and start digitalization if you have not started off. And yes, there will be failures. We had this morning, we had a constructive feedback dialogue with one of our customers. And yes, the guy said, you fucked up this. Sorry, my French, you fucked up there. But that's part of it. It's part of the journey of going digital. But that's the only way forward. So don't wait for any flag states or God knows what. Just make it yourself.
Well, you know, you talk about the fact that we have to go down this road. It's inevitable. But are the crew ready to live in that type of an environment? And the next generation, are they ready? Captain Soma, from your perspective, what do we need to do to address that? I think all of you agree digitalization is the way to go. But are we ready as an industry? Are the crew ready? Are the future generations ready?
Yeah, I think the digitalization, like I think most of us agree, is also, I mean, it's a process of adoption depending on how your organization is and at what stage and what level of, digitization or the process that. So the most important thing, like I highlighted in the beginning, is to understand your people first and what are the measures that you have initially taken to adopt certain digital tools and how it is. But the most important thing when we talk about technology or digital adoption or digitization in the industry is to get the aspect of trust and transparency between the people and the technology. Because as much as we speak about technology, the most worrying factor is that, I mean, we ourselves do, an employee engagement platform, but the biggest challenge we face is that the first resistance is to be able to trust the technology. To say that what does this do to me, what happens when I interact with this. So there are multiple challenges when it comes to trust. So the most important thing when we introduce digitalization into any system, no matter what kind of complexity we deal with, it is most important to get the buy-in from the people and build the trust layer through the technology to kind of deliver the right outcome that you expect from it, be it with regard to people, whether you do it for the purpose of process, but it needs to be done through the channel of trust. And I think that is the key any organization or any entity should establish with their people, to say that this is for this purpose, and the trust factor has to be bonded strong. And I think that's the key to any technology adoption. I think you take any global companies today which have grown large, the Googles of the world, the fundamental thing they try to constantly achieve is to build that trust with people.
Trust and transparency, that's the platform. And on the travel side, you're the last mile, but let's back up and start with the first mile. Before you can even get onto this platform, we need to look at health and wellness. So Gisa, from your perspective, is there enough information that we have to make that individual healthy enough for the riggers at sea? What else do you suggest? Because as you mentioned, there's a treasure trove of data available. And this trust, how do you build the trust between the individual who's going through a filter, who can say yes or no, you are fit for duty?
First, I would say change doesn't happen overnight. So on a human element perspective, on a psychological perspective, we said, or Captain already has spoken, right, that you have to consider the person, you have to be able to build that trust. But when you're looking at persons, you need to see the total behavior. So like a car, you have 4 wheels, right? So the front wheels of the car have your thinking and action, and the back wheels of the car are your physiology and your feelings. Okay, why am I saying this? Because when a person changes, you need to consider all 4 aspects. It's not just a feeling of, oh, that looks so nice, right? But there's also the mindset of how will I now integrate this into my personal career, into my personal well-being, and where this is going to take me. Okay. You also asked Adam, how do we prepare for failure? That is a mindset. So actually with Adam, we have collaborated on the Mindful Leadership Program for cadets, wherein it is the objective is to be able to build mental resiliency so that when cadets go on board, they're ready to face the stressors and what is out there at sea. And the point of having this conversation is to say that, digital or digitization allows us to educate more people. But is the education solely on an app? Because I think that health behavior change happens offline. And the app is a medium through which we can converse. But if we want to see a change in culture, team dynamics, and organization values being embedded in our teams, we need to go beyond the medium. So I hope I answered your question.
No, it does. In fact, there are a couple of things. You have to create these platforms so that we can make work more efficient, so there's better output. But I think there's one inherent assumption here, that the people who are going to use it are capable of using it and know how to use it. You mentioned education. At the end of the day, if we are going to try to recruit the next generations, wherever they come from, whatever country, the type of education that they have to go through from elementary to high school to college, if they have to go through college, must be STEM-based for them to be able to embrace a lot of what you're talking about. Otherwise, you make the platform available, how are they going to use it? And who's going to use it? It can't just be the people in the office, right? We want to take full advantage of that. So no, that's a very, very important element. So maybe now I can turn to this one question. From all of us, if all of you were to put a startup together and you were given $5 million, given all of the complexities that you've just talked about from first mile, and even first mile already assumes that who's coming in is already qualified, and you might have to pipeline backwards, all the way to the last mile, including crew change, because that's just the beginning of one cycle, and you have to cycle over and over again. If you were given $5 million, where should we start? Who would like to raise their hand, because this is the Shark Tank. And they're going to accept your proposal. Yes, Gisa.
Where would I start?
Yes.
If I had $5 million, well, basically, I would start with health policy. to be able to define what it means when we say crew welfare. I mean, that's not where $5 million goes, obviously, but that's just written, right? But I would work on funding research. We are a very under-researched, under-reported industry. We need more research out there. We need to be able to look into how all of this data is coming together, and that $5 million would go to research so that we have people that can run quantitative data, qualitative data, and put all of this information together. I'm seeing people nodding their heads, so thank you. You hear me? I am preaching to the choir. So,
Good. So we will all agree we've got to create this data bank where we can use some form of AI. So you wanted to look at health. Nikos, where do you want to start?
I wouldn't necessarily reinvent the wheel. If there are existing solutions, I would keep the money and use the existing solutions. First of all, we need to see if there are any, according to the needs of each.
No, but you're supposed to, somebody out here is going to give you $5 million. Where do you want to start? Oh, you're going to keep it. Okay. Well, that's a good answer. Okay. Captain Soma, where would you use $5 million?
Fine. For me, I think the $5 million is more into building a layer of complete engagement. I think, like I started off in the beginning, I mean, the fundamental thing that's missing is the central to this is the adoption of your system and processes. I think one thing that is missing is no matter, you can have multiple systems of operations. Today, I think the maritime industry has gone quite far in terms of what they have systems of adoption. You have HRMS platforms, you have technical, you've got maintenance platforms, you have travel portals, everything. But what is missing is how all these things get integrated into one single model, and how this can communicate to the end user, and how it builds efficiency as through an omni-channel. I think that is where I would put the $5 million.
So you would want to integrate everything that's out there. Nikos, you're going to keep the money, but he's going to use it to integrate. Okay, well, but I'm just kidding.
I'll use their idea.
Okay, very good. Adam, you often have given money away for training. What would you do with $5 million?
Okay, what I would do is something that actually one of our members is doing now and starting to do. It's slightly controversial. But the thing is, maritime training is hugely wasteful. And the reason being is because, as a pure example in the room next door with our cadets, we take on 200 cadets a year, 200 different individuals, and we put them through the same training program, which is very, very wasteful. In 10 years' time, we won't be doing that. We'll be getting a lot of data on each person. We'll work out what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and we'll be tailoring digital training to suit them, not just what suits the industry necessarily. So I would use that money to get away from this whole idea that one size fits all.
Okay. Roy, if you had $5 million, what more could you ask of the seafarer to really understand the pain points of the seafarer?
That's a good question. I had yesterday, that's a very good connection to it, a very good discussion with a friend of mine, Norman, who was sitting yesterday here in the panel, and we were a little bit arguing about how to reach out to those kids, so to speak, being today 16, 18, 20, finding a way to somewhat promote our industry being a sexy one. Because exactly those people, these little ones, have been growing up completely differently, in a completely different universe, so to speak, different space, TikTok, Facebook, name it, and they find it annoying to go into a manning agency, pulling a number, sitting half an hour somewhere, somewhat like we here, waiting to be heard and to be interviewed. They find it annoying going personally into a bank, open up a bank account, bringing a lot of paper in to somewhat opening simply a bank account. All these things we older guys, if I may say so, find quite normal. The new population out there, 16, 18, 20, are completely ticking differently. And I would like to spend this 5 million to find the magic formula somewhat to reach out to them.
Okay. Dimitri, you have experimented a lot with IT. What would you do with $5 million?
Well, I actually have a well thought through idea on the shelf, so I'm ready to share that. It's very likely that I'll spend the next 10, 15 years with Sea Teleport, so there is no harm. So there is this idea that seafarers well, there is this strong trend that seafarers are changing ships usually, right? So the next ship that they're joining is actually a different ship. And seafarers have very high level of uncertainty of what's going to happen on the ship, whether they will be, well paid, whether the maintenance of the ship is good, whether the supplies are there. All of these troubles and problems that are that have a lot of different facets, like financial, technical, etc., etc. So the idea was to create a social network, which is not that difficult to do, where seafarers can actually vote for different aspects that they're aware of. So let's say engineers can share thoughts about the state of the engine department. Navigational officers can share thoughts about something else. Why I'm thinking that this is an interesting idea is because it addresses a pretty painful point in seafarers' lives, where they really don't know what's going to happen, unless they're joining the same ship over and over, or working for 21 years for a very good German ship owner. But otherwise, majority of seafarers face this problem every day. So I would put 5 million there, and definitely don't go to travel. That would be super tough.
We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to just bring this full circle. What you've all shared is the fact that the last few years with COVID really drove home the need to use and leverage technology in order to keep everything going forward. So it's almost like saying, I think you suggested that necessity has been the mother of innovation, and in a sense is forced adoption. Whether or not that in itself is good enough, time will tell. But we are supposed to be talking about how digitalization will drive the future of crewing operations. So I'll start from you, Nikos, and we'll work backwards this way. Where do you see the future of crew digitalization or crewing operations leveraging off digitalization? And how would you like to give a closing statement, and then we'll work this way to the end of the panel?
I think everything starts from home, so from the shipping company, and the change of the mindset, and everything what has been already said, and everything that is being on the forum about the future can happen, but I think it all starts at home.
Okay, thank you. Roy?
Quite hard to answer to this difficult question in a nutshell. The only statement I can make here is simply do not wait for anyone, just move on and allow yourself failures, as we have been talking about. And digitalization is something somewhat brutal, but also somewhat amazing and enjoying, and I can only invite everybody, simply do it.
Do it. Do it. All right, Adam?
I think for me, there's only one reason we would really digitalise, and that's to get rid of waste. Whether the waste is money, whether it's time, whether it's resources, I think digitalisation is our opportunity to make everything faster and make everything cheaper.
Thank you. Dimitri?
That was actually my thought, but yeah. So we are making all the processes, all the workflows faster. We have to do them faster to be competitive. And the main purpose of digitalization is actually to empower people. I fully agree with Nikos on that.
Thank you. Gisa?
They've said a lot, robust workforce, all of that, but I think the future of digitalization, at least from the health perspective, right now we use a lot of open source mental health inventories. We use some outdated assessments, and there have actually been very little psychological studies as well when it comes to mental health inventories that cover all nationalities that we have in this industry. We don't even have a psychological test that you could say has been tested across all nationalities. So in the Philippines, we tend to use Western tests that do not apply to our population as well. So I think that the future is that by using digital, we can be able to standardize mental health inventories in the future and create something of our own. Because why not? By having better item reliability, creating robust inventories and so forth, you will be able to now create tools that speak to this particular industry.
Thank you,
That's
Gisa.
it.
Captain Soma?
Yeah, I think, digitalization is a must, I think, going ahead. Few things to hit the scale at which we are talking. I mean, you're talking about a huge workforce. To be able to kind of cater to the future workforce, which typically in the current statistics, the demography of the seafarers is anywhere between 19 to 35 years old, and they are close to 70% of the workforce. So it is important to understand how the digitalization works. And most importantly, I think as organizations, if you want to adopt digitalizations, there are four things that you need to do. First is to learn, unlearn, practice, and develop. I think these four principles you need to adopt how to digitalize. So one is you need to learn how to digitalize. You need to unlearn your past, throw the baggage out and start thinking fresh. Then start practicing and then develop into whatever you want to be into the future. So I would say that would be.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I guess if we were to summarize everything that we have discussed today, it is clearly that we need to find a way to do things more efficiently, which will hopefully make it better for everyone. But in the process of digitalization, I guess, just like what was discussed in the future or the transition in maritime, there are a group of people who may not necessarily have the skills to be able to adapt to the new digital platforms. We've got to take that into consideration. And this transition phase from where we are to where we want to be, we want to do that faster. We want to do that in a very inexpensive manner. But we have to take into consideration where the seafarers are. And if I go back to my friend Kuba here, the voice of the seafarer through ship managers and crew managers is very important. Because without that voice, and I can just give an example, if you ask yourselves, why don't we find more people interested in becoming marine engineers and working in the engine room? And oftentimes the answer is because the ergonomics of the engine room hasn't changed in all of these years. Whereas the ergonomics of other things, you talk of comfort and health, have changed. So we need to really have ship owners talk with ship managers, talk with crew managers, talk with shipbuilders, talk with classification societies and flag states. And that collaboration that you all talk about, including health, is going to be very important if we are going to build the seafarer of the future. So please join me in thanking the panel, and I hope that we've been able to give you an idea of digitalization. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Gisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dito.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thanks, Adam. Thank you.
Good show.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Not too bad, huh?
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Fantastic session and a beautiful segue there. I think one of the things that I think links these next